Here to share what he encountered last week at the March for Life is the parent of a Covington Catholic High School student and one of the chaperones on their trip to D.C., Jim Wilson. Mr. Wilson, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Jim, everyone is now familiar with really what happened with all of the kids at the Covington High School, including Nick Sandmann, who really became the central figure here when he confronted that Native American activist beating a drum, and which the activist says was an attempt to diffuse tensions between the boy and a very aggressive group known as the Black Hebrew Israelites. Now, here's a bit of the wider video that you might not have seen.
A bunch of incest babies. A bunch of babies made out of incest.
Yeah, you's a cracker. You's a cracker. All of you crackers.
Jim, you were a chaperone on this trip. What did you see, and why did the boys start chanting?
Well, I arrived after some of this had started. I had a group of boys with me. We were heading from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. And as you know, there's steps you walk up. We were walking up the steps, and there were a group of men to the left that I later learned were the Black Israelites, and there were a smaller group of men to the right, which I learned to be the Native Americans. And the gentleman with the drum was moving into the crowd of boys. While I was there, waited, the drumming went on, and I did hear things like, "You're from Europe, go home, this isn't your land." But then the Native Americans came out of the group of boys, and the boys exuded no violence on the Native Americans.
We have video of you here, and you're trying to get the kids to move. I'll let people watch that. Why didn't the group move away, Jim? Okay. Did you and the other chaperones try to get these boys, you know, away to stand somewhere else?
Well, I was able to move them back 15 feet. From where they were from the Black Israelites, and I was in between the Black Israelites, those men, and the boys, trying to get a few of their attention. I just want to convey, the boys had spent 16 hours on a bus. They had walked all over Washington, D.C., and it was 5:30 p.m. They hadn't had much sleep. So this whole activity of having grown men yell at them is kind of like being attracted to a car wreck. You want to look away, but you can't. Yeah. And the one thing I did start doing was saying, hey, this is like a shiny coin, a shiny coin. And 8 to 10 of the boys that were there that saw me and knew me said, oh, so we're not supposed to be listening to these guys. I'm like, no, we need to get out of here. And then they started saying, let's go home, let's go home. And then everybody took off over the hill to where the buses were coming in. And that was early. The buses hadn't arrived yet, but we were out of there. So from the time I arrived and the time the Native Americans left, I did get the boys out of there.
Nathan Phillips, this Native American elder, has said he was not trying to stir up trouble. He told the Today Show that he has forgiveness in his heart, but he actually blames the chaperones.
That forgiveness even goes to those chaperones and those teachers who should have just said, you students, this isn't the place. If we ever did meet, it would be those adults. I would like to ask why I didn't have those school administrators there and ask them why didn't they say no.
What would you like to say to Mr. Phillips, Jim?
I have some questions. Why did he feel he needed to confront children? Why didn't he confront the adults that were screaming the profanities? I mean, it's not exclusively, let me go after the children and do whatever his intent was there. They were sitting waiting for a bus. They were doing what they have done year after year. I've done 4 of these trips over the last 8 years. And we show up, we have Mass, we eat, we sightsee, we do the march, we sightsee, and we show up at the Lincoln Memorial. The boys do sightsee around there, they do their cheers on the steps, and we go home. Right. So the boys were doing exactly what they have done for years. Yeah. The new element were the men that were there that had decided to share their point of view, which came across very negative to the boys.
They were verbally taunting and abusing these kids. I mean, to my eye, to anybody's eye. And I did find it strange that you have a grown man trying to diffuse tension by banging a drum in a child's face. If I tried that in Washington, D.C., I promise you the Capitol Police would drag me away. Phillips also tried to disrupt a mass at the National Basilica.
Well, there were parents there.
Yeah, I want to show people this, though, Jim, first. He tried to interrupt a mass. Phillips also tried to interrupt a mass at the National Basilica the day after the march. Security had to lock the doors to protect the people inside. So he may be this avuncular figure in the media, but he also broke out of jail. He was not a Vietnam vet, we're learning. He was a veteran, but he didn't serve in the theater, as he claimed. What's your reaction to all of that and the tension on him?
My reaction to him is I don't understand the message he's trying to send. And if he were there were parents there. So why go up to a child? Why not go up to the parents? I mean, I arrived later, but there were other parents there that he could have went to and talked to instead of finding a child to bang a drum in the face. And then his friends that were with him were telling the children to go home. They don't deserve to be here. Go back to Europe. They don't deserve this land. How does attacking a child in a controversial statement calm a situation? I think that question needs to be answered.
Jim, as a parent, were you surprised that the Diocese of Covington was so quick to condemn the actions of these students? They said before all the evidence was in, quote, "This behavior is opposed to the Church's teaching on the dignity and respect of the human person. The matter is being investigated, and we will take appropriate action up to and including expulsion." The diocese has now authorized an independent investigation of your children and these other students. Your thoughts?
Thank you for that. What my feeling is on this, since I know people involved, like I know there's good people at the Covington Catholic School. I've met Bishop Foys, and I believe him to be a good man. It just seems like what happens sometimes in life when there's a crisis. There's a lot of dust. Sometimes people don't know if down is up or up is down, and they're just trying to assess the situation in a manner that they can try to get control over it. I believe Bishop Foys and the school are going to do the right thing. So that's how I looked at the statement when it came out.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked by it, I have to tell you personally. And I was thinking, my gosh, if this were my child, because that statement was being used as evidence that these kids had done something wrong, Jim, which I'm sure you felt as you watched this unfold. And the other thing that I find stunning, they're authorizing an independent investigation of these school kids on the steps of a monument, but we've got bishops engaged in all kinds of malfeasance, sexually related, and there's no independent investigation of them by the laity. Your thoughts?
Well, I think they're investigating the whole scene. I'm not. No one's came to me and told me it's things that you hear. I think they're investigating the whole environment. They're investigating all parties involved to make sure the bases are covered, and I believe to make sure the kids are protected. That is currently how I am looking at that.
Nathan Sandmann, the young man at the center of this initial video, he went public. He was asked if he would like to apologize. Here's what he told the Today Show. Watch.
As far as standing there, I had every right to do so. My position is that I was not disrespectful to Mr. Phillips. I respect him. I'd like to talk to him. I mean, in hindsight, I wish we could have walked away and avoided the whole thing. But I can't say that I'm sorry for listening to him and standing there.
What do you make of the way Nick conducted himself during that time with Mr. Phillips banging the drum in his face?
I thought he handled himself. Okay, we have a child being approached by an adult, banging a drum in his face, yelling in his face, and having the people with him yell at them that they needed to go back to Europe and they didn't belong here. Stood there calmly and dealt with the situation. He could have been nervous. He could have been unsure what was going on. But he stood there and peaceably waited until the event passed. So I think considering that he's a child, I think he handled the situation wonderfully.
Some online, Jim, even priests and bishops, the Bishop of Lexington, for instance, have suggested that it was the MAGA hats, those red hats, that were the cause of all the trouble, and the boys should not have been allowed to wear them to a pro-life march. Is that a valid criticism?
If I may, I have some opportunity to think about that letter.
Yeah.
I actually had an opportunity to read that letter. Initially, after I finished reading it, I got the impression that maybe the bishop may come out with more. The letter seemed incomplete, and there's some things that need to be expanded upon. One, we're on a march to protect innocent life. Do people look at children as innocents? And we had adults attacking children, and children are being held to a higher standard. It almost seems like the phrase "judging a book by its cover," which is what's caused so much controversy, and why people are saying, why can't I wear this clothes? I'm being targeted, or I'm being screened, and people are judging me based on something I have or I wear. The next thing I worry about in his statement, which is why I think he may want to expand it, or he may be thinking to expand it, is you're telling someone who's a victim of a crime that it's their fault. And then the other aspect is, you know, you have kids there, and if the hat was such an issue, why weren't the kids, why wasn't guidance given to the kids not to wear the hats? The other aspect is Covington Catholic wasn't the only kids wearing the hats.
No, there were kids all over
Catholic
the march wearing
kids from all across the United States that had the hats. So the letter seems to be directed a little too pointedly at Covington Catholic. It's like saying, you know, don't wear the hats. You know, if everyone's going to jump off the bridge, you're going to jump off the bridge too? Well, what if you don't know it's a bridge? I mean, it's kind of like saying the kids should have known something ahead of not knowing it. And I get it. I want to understand that the church is all-inclusive. They're there seeking to spread the word of Christ. I get it. And politics and religion do not mix. Right. Okay, I get it. But I think the bishop in Lexington, who I've not met, who's probably is a good man too, might just need to expand what he's trying to convey instead of giving the impression that he's saying the boys are at fault. And I hope that's not the case.
No, it sounds like he's giving license to the abuse of these boys because of a piece of apparel they were wearing. And I don't think anyone has a right to approach a child, assault a child, or do anything to a child, particularly if you're an adult. That's not your role, no matter what they're wearing. Jim, very quickly, because I'm almost out of time, have you and your families received any threats, or the families of the boys that were in your care during this trip? And should those people be prosecuted?
Okay. The 20 or so boys that were with me also arrived late. I am not aware of them receiving a death threat. Okay. I have not, on social media, I have been called a lot of bad things. But threatening the children, the county prosecutor in the Kenton County is pursuing a legal remedy to the crimes of death threats to families and children. And I do think it needs to be pursued so everybody understands they just can't put anything they want to out there causing harm to somebody else.
No, you can't attack kids. Jim Wilson, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.